Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
In 2003, I moved to a town called Guelph. My mother and I didn't see eye to eye on the subject of me not working while in high school, so she kicked my ass to the curb and I moved in with my dad. Shortly after arriving in Guelph, my dad and I moved to a new apartment so that I could have my own room. In return for this, he tasked me with finding and attending a school. I was psyched at being treated like an adult. The first night in our new place, I was restless. It had been a particularly hot day and the night was muggy to the point where your clothes would just stick to your skin. I was trying my best to sleep, but it just wasn't going to happen. I decided to go for a late night stroll, and gathered my things. We had a little table next to the door where we kept our keys, but for some reason my keys weren't there. The apartment was fairly bare at this time, as prior to my arrival my dad hadn't really accumulated much in terms of furniture, so when I glanced around the almost empty living room, I saw my keys in the northeast corner. I grabbed them and went for a walk. The walk itself was uneventful. Saw some stores that might be useful to know about, and just got a better feel for the neighborhood. When I walked in the door, my old man was sitting in the kitchen. He jumped up and yelled,
"Why the fuck are you throwing my keys across the room in the middle of the fucking night?"
I had no idea what he was talking about. I tried to explain about my keys as well, but he was pissed. He stormed back to bed warning me not to
"Fuck around or else you'll lay around."
Thanks, Dad. On my way to bed, I looked at the corner where my keys had been and I noticed that his keys were fucking imprinted in the wall. I'm not sure what kind of force that would take, but I'm fairly sure that at the time, I was not capable of it. I went back to bed, and even though I was very tired, I barely slept. This was the first of many events that took place in our little apartment in Guelph. After about a month of being in the apartment, my dad and I had collected a respectable amount of furniture from the curb of houses whose occupants were either evicted or just up and left. Guelph is a college town, so there are a lot of students that vacate a property and leave almost all their shit. Strange concept to me, but fortuitous at the time. We collected almost everything we could want, but we bought beds. Seriously, we were poor, but we weren't about to sleep on cum, blood, shit or piss-stained mattresses. My dad got himself a big queen bed with headboard etc., and I ended up with a bunk bed, in case my brother visited. The bottom bunk folded up into a couch, so I was happy anyways. One day, while I was maxing and relaxing on my badass couch, I heard a slam in the living room. I was alone at home, so it scared the shit out of me. I ran out to see what had happened, and found the TV on the floor. It had been resting on milk crates, so I dismissed it for having just been unstable. I picked it up and set it back on the crates. I went back to my room, and laid back down. I dozed off, but was woken to yet another slam. This one was much louder and again, I nearly shit myself. I went back to the living room, figuring the TV had fallen again, but I found it in pieces in the northeast corner. The wall had been damaged badly, and I didn't know what to do. I went to my room, locked the door, and waited for my dad to come home. When he got in, he flipped and accused me of throwing the TV at the wall. He knew full well that such things were far out of character for me, so when I tried to explain what happened, he listened this time around. We both agreed that someone for some reason was coming into the apartment to fuck with us, so we agreed to keep the door locked at all times. We cleaned up together, had dinner and went to bed. That night I had dreams of an elderly woman who was wearing a yellow sundress. She was short, thin, and looked to be incredibly frail. Her face is what bothered me most though. Her eyes were sunken and cold, her skin had been cut up and jagged scars were left behind. Her mouth was just a black pit. She stood in my dream, in the northeast corner of our living room. she shrieked, and I woke up with a start. I was sweating all over, but felt incredibly cold despite it being a summer night. The summer passed, and I had no more incidents in the apartment aside from my keys moving to that corner. It now scared the hell out of me, so I found a stick on one of my walks and kept it inside to retrieve my keys with. I know that it sounds absurd, but that's what I did. Come September, I was enrolled in a nearby high school. My first class was biology, which in itself is unremarkable, but it's where I met my best friend Rob. Rob and I became fast friends, and we were inseparable. Rob had quite a few other friends as well, and introduced me so that we would all get to know one another. Before long, I had a circle of friends that I thought were just fucking dandy. One day after school, I brought Rob to my place, and introduced him to my dad. We played SNES games, that's all I had at the time, and Dad ordered us some pizza. We had a wicked night. As things were winding down for the night, I went into my room to grab something that I can't recall to give to Rob. My dad had already gone to bed and told us to keep things quiet. As I was searching for whatever it was, I heard Rob talking to someone. I thought maybe he pulled out his phone to tell his parents that he would be home soon. When I came out into the living room, he asked me,
"Dude, what the fuck is wrong with your grandmother? She walked out of your dad's room, stares at me, and then goes back in. She looked pretty fucked up."
My heart sank. My grandparents are dead. We rushed into my dad's room and found him already sitting up. He was staring at the wall that separated his room and the living room. "Dad, I'm so sorry if we woke you up. We just had a bit of a fright, that's all." He craned his neck in a way that sent shivers down my spine and said,
"Naughty little boys did this to me,"
in a voice that was most certainly not his. I started to cry and Rob dragged me out of the apartment. I don't remember just how we got there, but Rob brought us to his place. I was hysterical. When Rob and his parents finally calmed me down, the two of us went to his room. His parents called 911 to check on my dad as I was repetitively telling them that she is going to hurt him. I wouldn't say who she was, but Rob knew, and asked his parents to oblige me. While Rob's parents were dealing with all of that, I asked him who he had seen in the apartment.
"Some old woman in a yellow dress."
I tore out of his place with the speed that only someone filled with desperation can achieve. When I arrived at my apartment building, there were 2 police cruisers outside. I feared the worst. I walked up to our unit, each step reaffirming to myself that my father had met some grisly end at the hands of this woman. What had actually happened, though, was just as shocking. The police woke my dad by knocking on the door. He had no recollection of any of this happening, and I got an earful from him and the 2 attending officers. I was in utter disbelief. The day after all of this happened, Rob and I were, as he put it, shit-baked. I didn't want to stay in that apartment anymore, and he didn't want to visit, which made it doubly unpleasant. His parents didn't want me to visit him either, as I had apparently earned myself the title of boy who cried ghost wolf. September continued on and passed, and the events in the apartment seemed to calm down. Christmas time rolled around, and all was well. The events in my apartment seemed to have stopped, and Rob and I were allowed to visit one another freely again. My dad was out of town for work, and I decided that it would be great if we had a party at my place. Rob agreed wholeheartedly. It was the 23rd of December. I recall this vividly because I was avid that we keep the place clean for my dad's return the next day, Christmas Eve. And the booze flowed freely. The apartment was small, but we managed to fit around 30 people in there, and it was rocking. Good music, good drinks, and even some good women. We were all having a blast. By around 2 a.m. on the 24th, there were only 6 or so of us left. Rob, his girlfriend, me, my girlfriend, and a couple others that have since faded into obscurity. We were all sitting around the coffee table in the living room smoking a joint, when Rob's girl excused herself to go to the bathroom. She walked towards it, and the door slammed. We all jumped a little.
Wow, what an asshole. Open the fucking door, guy.
I asked her who was in the bathroom, but she said it was dark in there and couldn't see who it was that slammed the door. I walked over, and called out something along the lines of, "Hey buddy, open up, this isn't a hotel." Rob was now at my side because he was always up for fucking up someone that wronged one of our group. He was a little less kind than I was.
Open the fucking door or I'll kill.
Banging and pounding and knocking and slamming. Whoever was on the other side of that door was fucked. The racket was unbelievable and I was fed up. I nodded to Rob, and without a word, he counted. 1, 2, 3. We both hit the door at the same time, but it didn't budge. Instead, the shrieking began. I don't know how to describe the noise we heard, but the best I can do is that it was a mix between a wounded cougar and an enraged woman. Rob and I looked at one another. He was as pale as he could be, and I'm sure I was as well. Every bit of blood ran out of my face, and I felt a horrid lump in my stomach. The pounding on the door and the shrieking continued, but somehow I managed to muster the courage to do this. Rob. 1, 2, 3. We both slammed the door again, and this time we both went through it. And then it stopped. No more pounding. No more screaming. No one in the bathroom. Lights on. We scrambled to our feet, and looked at the girls. They were horrified, and had gone as pale as we already were. The lot of us grabbed what we could of our things, and we left. We left that fucking apartment and we ran. I never returned there. My dad returned from working in another city, called Rob's Place, and gave me shit for the state I had left the apartment in, and I told him I didn't care because I was never going back. I explained what happened, and he didn't believe a word of it. I told him that if we weren't going to get a new place, I'd live with Rob and his parents. We got a new place a few weeks later. My dad was pissed about having to do the moving out of the apartment all alone, so I had to move all the stuff into our new place alone. He even saved enough to get me a computer for Christmas, God bless him, and gave it to me when we moved. A year or so later, I decided that maybe I could rationally think about what happened in the apartment, and I decided to Google the address. I was linked back and forth until I finally came across something significant, which was an article written about the building. Woman, 79, brutally murdered in her apartment. I will never go there again.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.